It was a cold Friday night, the kind where the wind howled through the trees and the chill seeped through the windows. My husband, Mark, had left earlier that evening for a business trip, leaving me with nothing but the soft glow of the living room lights and the hum of the TV. I was settled on the couch, sipping on my wine, when I heard a knock at the door. I glanced at the clock, 11:30 p.m. Who could possibly be here this late? Reluctantly, I stood and walked toward the door, wondering if maybe Mark had forgotten something, or if it was just one of the neighbors needing to borrow something. But when I opened the door, it wasn't anyone I expected. There he stood, Jack, Mark's best friend. "Hey, sorry to drop by so late," Jack said, his voice unusually low and hesitant. His hands were shoved into the pockets of his jacket, and his eyes avoided mine as he shifted uncomfortably on the doorstep. "Jack, what's going on?" I asked, feeling a rush of concern. He looked out of sorts. His usual confident, playful demeanor was gone. In its place was a strange tension, like he was carrying something heavy on his shoulders. I need to talk to you," he said, looking at the ground before raising his eyes to meet mine. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, motioning for him to enter. As Jack crossed the threshold, the weight of the situation seemed to settle in. Why would Mark's best friend need to talk to me, alone, at this hour? But before I could ask, Jack was already sitting on the couch, his hands nervously rubbing together. I sat down across from him, my curiosity bubbling. The air between us was thick, heavy with something unsaid, something building. "Jack, is everything all right?" I asked, my voice gentle. He took a deep breath, the sound filling the space between us. "No, not really," he muttered, shaking his head slightly. "There's something I've been carrying around for a while, and it's eating at me." I stared at him, unsure of what he was talking about. I had known Jack for years, ever since he and Mark had met in college. They were inseparable, like brothers. But tonight, there was a distance between us that I had never felt before. Jack's gaze flickered to me for a moment, and I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before. Vulnerability. It was so stark against his usual cocky, carefree attitude that it made my heart skip a beat. I've never wanted to hurt anyone, especially not Mark. Jack continued, his voice strained. But the truth is, I can't keep hiding this. I need to say it. I felt my stomach tighten, a cold rush of confusion and dread sweeping over me. "Jack, what are you talking about?" He hesitated again, clearly struggling with the words. "I've been in love with you for a long time, Ellie." The world around me seemed to freeze. My mind went blank as I processed his words. My husband's best friend, the man who had been like a brother to me for years, was telling me that he was in love with me. It didn't make sense. How could this be happening? How had I missed the signs? Jack had always been a flirt, but this was something deeper. This was something real, and it hit me harder than I could have ever imagined. "I know this is unexpected," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper, "but I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I've tried to bury it. I've tried to ignore it. But every time I'm around you, every time I see you with Mark, I just can't stop the way I feel. and I needed to tell you because it's tearing me apart. I sat frozen, my mind racing. My thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion, disbelief, and shock. I had never once considered Jack as anything more than a friend, let alone this. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I didn't know how to respond. What was I supposed to say? How was I supposed to process this? Ellie, Jack said, his voice breaking. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed you to know. I couldn't carry this secret any longer. He looked at me with such raw sincerity, such desperation, that it made my heart ache. I had known Jack my whole life. He had always been there for me, for us. But now, everything had changed. The lines had blurred. For a moment, everything felt too much. I needed space. I needed to think. But Jack's presence was overwhelming. The tension was thick, palpable, and it felt like I was suffocating under the weight of it. Jack, I don't know what to say, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. This is all. It's too much. I need time to think. I don't even know what I'm feeling. I understand, he said softly, standing up. I'm sorry, Ellie. I didn't want to complicate things. I just couldn't keep pretending. He turned to leave, but as he reached the door, he paused. I don't regret telling you. I just hope you'll understand. And with that, he left, leaving me standing in the middle of the room, my heart pounding, my mind in a state of complete turmoil. What had just happened? What was I supposed to do now? The following days felt like I was walking through a fog. Jack's confession echoed in my mind with every step, every glance. It was impossible to shake the feeling that something had shifted, something irrevocable that I couldn't ignore. Mark returned from his trip on Sunday evening, his usual smile lighting up his face as he walked through the door. But something inside me felt different. I wasn't sure if it was the weight of Jack's words still hanging heavy in the air, or if it was the fact that I was now keeping a secret from the man I loved. But the familiarity of our home felt distant, almost alien. Hey, how was the trip? I asked, trying to sound normal as I kissed him on the cheek. It was fine, he replied, shrugging off his coat. A little stressful, but nothing I couldn't handle. You doing okay? You look a bit off. I hesitated. How could I tell him? How could I share what had happened just days before, knowing how much it would hurt him? I had always prided myself on the honesty in our relationship, but now everything felt like it was about to crumble. I'm just tired, I said finally, forcing a smile. You know how it is, lots to catch up on. Mark didn't seem convinced, but he let it go. He always did. That's one of the things I loved about him. His trust, his easygoing nature. He was the rock in our relationship, while I often found myself caught up in the currents of emotions I couldn't always explain. We spent the evening together, watching a movie and talking about his trip, but my mind was a million miles away. Every time I saw Jack's face in my mind, I felt a cold pit form in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was lying, that I was hiding something monumental from Mark. The next few days passed in a blur of half-hearted smiles and forced conversations. I kept my distance from Jack, avoiding him at all costs. I knew that if I allowed myself to get too close, if I spent another moment alone with him, I wouldn't be able to resist the pull between us. The connection I had always ignored had now become undeniable. But it wasn't just Jack. It was me. I had feelings for him too. Feelings I had buried so deep inside me that I couldn't even admit them to myself until now. One morning, as I was leaving for work, I spotted Jack across the street, walking toward the coffee shop as usual. My heart skipped a beat, and I found myself frozen for a moment, watching him. He hadn't seen me, and I quickly turned away, trying to quell the rush of emotions that flooded through me. But something stopped me. I didn't want to run away from this anymore. I couldn't. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking slightly as I dialed his number. After a few rings, he picked up. "Ellie?" His voice was steady, but I could hear the undercurrent of hope that made my stomach twist. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "Can we meet?" There was a brief silence before he responded. "Of course. When and where?" "Now," I said, before I could second-guess myself. "At the park. I'll meet you there in 10 minutes. I hung up quickly, my pulse racing. What was I doing? What was I going to say to him? I wasn't sure I had the answers, but I knew I had to figure this out. The park was empty when I arrived, the early morning mist still hanging in the air. Jack was already waiting on the bench, his hands in his pockets, his gaze focused on the ground. When I approached, he looked up, and the sight of his eyes, filled with so much emotion, so much hope, made my breath catch. "Hey," I said softly, taking a seat beside him. "Hey," he replied, his voice low. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually come." "I almost didn't," I admitted, feeling the weight of the truth between us. "I don't know what I'm doing, Jack. I don't know what I'm feeling, but I can't keep pretending that everything's okay. I can't ignore what happened." He nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. "I didn't expect you to come here with all the answers," he said quietly. "But I just needed to know that you heard me, that you understand why I had to tell you." "I do," I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. "I understand, but now I don't know what comes next. I don't have all the answers either," he said softly, his voice raw with emotion. "But I want to be with you, Ellie. I want to see where this goes, even if it's complicated." His words hit me like a tidal wave. I could feel the pull between us, the same magnetic force that had been there all along. And as much as I tried to fight it, as much as I tried to push it away, I knew I couldn't anymore. "I'm scared," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm scared of what it would mean if I gave in. I'm scared of losing everything." "You won't lose everything," Jack said, his voice firm. "If this is real, we'll figure it out, together." I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time, and in that moment, I realized that I couldn't deny it anymore. The connection between us was real. The feelings were real. And as terrifying as it was, I couldn't let fear rule me anymore. "I don't know what happens next," I whispered, "but I'm willing to find out." Jack smiled, a look of relief washing over his face. "That's all I need, Ellie. One step at a time." And in that moment, I knew that everything had changed. I had stepped into the unknown, into a place where the lines between right and wrong, loyalty and desire, had blurred beyond recognition. It's funny how quickly everything can change when you stop fighting what's already in motion. After that conversation in the park, I couldn't tell if I had made a choice or if the choice had been made for me. The truth of the matter was, I had crossed a line. There was no going back to the way things had been. Not now. Not after everything Jack had said, after everything I had felt. The days after meeting him at the park were a blur of emotions. Fear, guilt, anticipation, all of it mixed together. I didn't tell Mark. I couldn't. How could I? How could I explain to my husband that his best friend had confessed his love for me and that I was considering it? That I, too, felt the same pull, the same longing? No, I couldn't do that to him. Mark had always been the steady one between us. He had his faults, sure, but he was good to me. He trusted me. We had built our life on that trust, that unspoken understanding. So the guilt gnawed at me even more with every passing day. Jack's confession had ignited something inside me, something I couldn't put out, but it didn't change the fact that I was still married, still bound by a promise I had made to Mark. The line between loyalty and temptation felt so thin, I could hardly tell where one ended and the other began. One night, a week after the park conversation, I found myself staring at my phone, the screen glowing in the dark. Jack had texted me a few hours earlier. We need to talk again, soon. The words lingered in my mind, their meaning clear as day. He was ready. He was waiting for me to decide, to take that final step. I hadn't responded yet. Mark was asleep beside me, his steady breathing the only sound in the room. I couldn't help but glance at him, watching the rise and fall of his chest, thinking about how much I loved him, about all the years we had shared together. And yet, Jack's face, his voice, his touch, the way he made me feel, was never far from my thoughts. I had tried to push it all away. I had tried to tell myself that it was just a fleeting moment, that the feelings I had for Jack were nothing more than an infatuation, something to be ignored. But every time I saw him, every time our eyes met, I felt something pull me toward him. It was like a magnet, invisible yet impossible to ignore. It wasn't just about sex or lust. It wasn't even just about the thrill of the forbidden. It was deeper than that. Jack understood me in ways that Mark didn't. He saw me, really saw me, in ways that Mark never had. And that made all the difference. I got out of bed, careful not to wake Mark, and went to the kitchen. I needed something to calm my nerves, something to settle my mind. The weight of the decision I had yet to make hung over me like a storm cloud, suffocating me with its intensity. Just as I was pouring myself a glass of water, I heard a soft knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat. I froze. Who could it be at this hour? I glanced at the clock. 2:30 a.m. I knew immediately who it was. I set the glass down, my heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't told Jack where I lived, hadn't invited him over. But in that moment, I knew exactly why he was here. I opened the door slowly, my hands shaking. There stood Jack, his dark hair tousled, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that took my breath away. "I know it's late," he said, his voice low and almost apologetic. "But I couldn't wait anymore. I need to talk to you, Ellie." I stepped aside, not knowing what to say, not knowing if I should let him in or if I should turn him away. But I couldn't bring myself to turn him away. Not now. As he walked in, I could feel the tension in the air thickening. It was the same tension that had been there every time we had spoken since the park. But now it felt different. It felt like we were at a precipice, standing on the edge of something we couldn't fully understand yet, but something that was undeniably real. I know you've been struggling with this, Jack said, his voice soft as he took a seat on the couch. I get it. You're torn. I've been torn too. But I can't just wait around forever, Ellie. I need to know what we are. I sat down across from him, my heart hammering in my chest. What do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling. I mean, he ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. I mean that I can't pretend that this, whatever this is, doesn't matter. You can't pretend either. Not after everything we've said, after everything I've felt. I can't walk away from this. My stomach twisted. Every word he spoke was like a knife, cutting deeper into the already fragile fabric of my life. He was right. I couldn't pretend anymore. The feelings were too real, too strong to ignore. But I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know what the next step was. I'm scared, I whispered. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know what happens if I choose you. Jack's eyes softened, and he leaned forward slightly. You don't have to choose me right now, he said gently. But you need to make a choice. For yourself. Because I can't keep standing here, waiting for you to decide, while we both know what we want. His words hit me harder than anything he had ever said. He was right. I had to decide, but how could I? How could I choose between two men I cared about? Between love and desire? Between security and the unknown? I stood up suddenly, my thoughts swirling. I need time, Jack. I need time to figure this out. I can't keep living like this. I understand, he said quietly, standing up as well. But just know, Ellie, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here, waiting for you to make your choice. As he walked toward the door, he turned to me once more. Take as long as you need, but when you're ready, come find me. I'll be waiting. And with that, he was gone, leaving me standing alone in the dark, my heart torn between two worlds. The next few days were a blur of confusion and guilt. Every time I closed my eyes, Jack's words echoed in my mind. When you're ready, come find me. I couldn't stop thinking about him, about what he meant to me. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had with Mark either. I was trapped in a maze of emotions, unsure of which way to turn. The decision I had been avoiding, the choice I had been running from, was now staring me in the face, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to make it. I loved Mark. I had built my life with him. But the connection I had with Jack was undeniable. Every look, every touch, felt like it had always been meant to be. Mark had no idea what was happening. He had no idea that his best friend had confessed his love for me, or that I was feeling something in return. Mark trusted me. I couldn't betray that trust, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that betrayal had already begun. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I was living a lie, pretending to be the person I'd been, while my heart was torn in two directions. I had spent the last few days keeping my distance from Jack. I avoided his texts, his calls, hoping that if I ignored it long enough, it would go away. But it didn't. The more I tried to push it down, the more it surfaced. I had to decide. It was time to face the truth. That evening, I told Mark that I needed to go out for a walk to clear my head. He seemed concerned, but he didn't push. He never did. I slipped out of the house, trying to steady my breath, trying to calm my racing heart. The air was cool against my skin, but it did little to soothe the fire inside me. I found myself walking toward the park again, the same place where Jack and I had met days earlier. As I approached, I saw him sitting on the same bench, waiting for me. My heart skipped a beat. He stood as I walked closer, his expression unreadable. "Ellie," he said softly, as if he had been waiting forever. "Are you sure about this? Are you sure you're ready to make a choice?" I didn't answer right away. The weight of everything, the decision that had been hanging over me, suddenly felt unbearable. I had no idea what was going to happen next, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending anymore. "I don't know if I'm ready," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't know if I can go through with this, but I can't keep living like this. I can't keep running away from what I feel." Jack stepped closer, his eyes softening with something close to relief. "Ellie," he whispered, "I'm not asking for everything. I'm asking for a chance to see where this can go, a chance to be with you." I looked up at him, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. The way he looked at me, the way he made me feel. It wasn't just desire. It was something deeper, something I had been ignoring for far too long. "I don't know what happens next," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to see where this goes. I need to know what this is, what I feel." Jack's face broke into a smile, a real one, and for the first time in days, I felt a weight lift off my chest. I had made the choice. I had decided to take a step into the unknown, to face the truth of what was happening between us. "I'm with you, Ellie," he said, his voice steady. "We'll figure it out together." But even as I stood there, the decision made, I couldn't shake the fear that lingered in my chest. What would happen when Mark found out? What would happen when the truth came crashing down? I had crossed a line. There was no going back from this. The days that followed were both exhilarating and terrifying. Every moment spent with Jack felt like a secret I was desperate to keep, and every moment with Mark felt like a lie. The tension between my love for Mark and the undeniable pull I felt for Jack became unbearable. I tried to focus on the moments I shared with Mark, but Jack's presence, his touch, the weight of his confession, everything haunted me. But the inevitable truth was closing in. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, pretending that everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. I had made my choice, but I wasn't sure I was prepared for what would happen next. It felt like I was on the edge of something monumental, something that would change everything. But no matter how much I tried to ignore it, I knew that the truth was always waiting to come to light. I couldn't keep this hidden forever. And as much as I loved Mark, the guilt of what I had done was starting to eat me alive. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Mark finally noticed something was wrong. I had spent the morning with Jack, trying to act normal, trying to ignore the storm inside me. But when I returned home, Mark was waiting for me, his eyes dark with concern. "Ellie," he said, his voice tight, "we need to talk." I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. The words I had been dreading, the words I had known would come, were finally here. The truth was out, and it was time to face the consequences. "Mark," I said softly, trying to steady my breath. I never wanted you to find out like this, but there's something I have to tell you." He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, watching me, waiting for me to speak. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, a gulf that seemed impossible to bridge. The weight of everything I had done, everything I had hidden, suddenly felt unbearable. I began, but my voice faltered. "I've been seeing Jack. The words hung in the air between us, and I watched as Mark's face slowly went pale. His lips pressed together, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before. Hurt. Deep, raw hurt that made my heart ache. "You've been seeing Jack?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if he couldn't quite believe what I was saying. "Behind my back? While I was away?" I nodded slowly, tears welling up in my eyes. "I didn't want this, Mark. I never meant for this to happen. But No," Mark interrupted, shaking his head. I don't want to hear it." I opened my mouth to protest, but he held up his hand, stopping me. "I can't believe this," he said, his voice breaking. "You've been with him, Ellie. You've been lying to me, and I've trusted you." "I'm so sorry," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I never wanted to hurt you. You're everything to me, but I don't know what happened. It just happened." Mark's eyes darkened, and I could see the pain in them. "You've been lying to me, to both of us. This whole time, I thought we had something real. I thought we had trust. I didn't want to betray that trust," I said, my throat tightening. "But it's not just about the lies. It's about me, Mark. It's about what I feel, and I don't know how to fix this." Mark stepped back, his face a mixture of disbelief and sorrow. "I don't know if this can be fixed, Ellie. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I had known deep down that there would be consequences for my actions, but hearing Mark say it, seeing the hurt in his eyes, was something I wasn't prepared for. "I love you, Mark," I said, my voice shaking. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I also don't want to lie to you anymore. I don't know where this will go, but I can't keep pretending. I can't." Mark stood there for a long time, his back to me, his arms crossed. The silence was deafening. I could feel the walls we had built between us, the trust we had shared, crumbling before my eyes. "I think you need to leave," he finally said, his voice low but steady. "I need some time to think, and I think you need to figure out what you really want." I felt the sting of his words like a blade to my heart. But I didn't argue. I couldn't. I had already done enough damage. I grabbed my coat, my hands trembling as I pulled it on. I could feel Mark's eyes on me as I left, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I walked out the door and into the night, the cold air biting at my skin. But the chill in my chest was far worse than any winter wind. I had made my choice, but now I had to live with it. I had to face the consequences of what I had done, and I had no idea if I would ever be able to repair the damage I had caused.